call to order. We have technical problems here at the head desk, under the desk, to get this working. And this needs to work in order for you to have a good day. So we're going to stand at ease until we get more tech support in here, and we're going to get this thing fired up. Thank you.
I got to remember where this computer's at.
Here. There's some more light for you too, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I got it. Yeah.
That looks much better. Does that work? Yay! Thank you so much.
Here's your screwdriver. I'll put it back. I know. I saw where you got it. Hey, there's a little door right there.
I saw that.
Yeah, I forgot
So
about
we
that.
didn't need this.
No, no.
Senate will come to order on this Monday, February 21st. Roll call, please.
Legislative Day number 6, Monday, February 21st, roll call. Anderson? Here. Baldwin? Here. Beitman? Here. Boner? Here. Bouchard? Case? Present. Cooper? Here. Driscoll? Here. Ellis? Present. French? Here. Purphy? Here. Garou? Here. Hicks? Here. Hutchings? Here. James? Here. Kinski? Here. Kolb? Present. Cost? Here. Landon? Here. McEwen? Here. Nethercott? Here. Pappas? Here. Perkins? Perkins? Here. Rothfuss? Here. Salzar? Here. Schuler? Here. Scott? Here. Steinmetz? Here. Wasserberger? Here. Bouchard? Here. President Dockstader?
Here.
30 present.
Prayer by retired Reverend Richard Gilbert, Methodist Church.
Senators, staff, thank you for the privilege of leading you in prayer for one more week. I hear that you have been in committee meetings, so possibly you're prepared for prayer. Let us pray. Amen. Is that the end? Sovereign God, you presided over the dawn of creation and will preside at the final consummation. As your mantle has fallen on Washington and Lincoln and numerous other leaders, may it continue to fall upon all present elected and appointed to preside. May all be endowed with humility and honesty, mercy and justice, foresight and forbearance, and all necessary qualities to preside wisely and equitably. We pray for peace on the border of Russia and Ukraine and all borders of conflict. May faith, hope, and love abide so people may live in peace and have the freedom to pursue purposeful, peaceful, personal pursuits. May all who preside during this legislature and all who attend legislative sessions know the beneficial fruits of righteousness and justice, equity, and every good path, so to have wisdom of heart and knowledge of soul. Creative God, you presided over the dawn of creation, and it was very good. So at the conclusion of all our labors, may we be able to say, very good. So we pray. Amen.
Senator Landon, would you lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Reading, correction, approval of the journal. Will the reading clerk please read the journal committee report?
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 18, 2022 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Kolb, Chairman.
Thank you. We're going to have our reading clerk just get real friendly with that mic today. For whatever reason, you're a little softer than usual, but we do appreciate all your work. Thank you. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, message number 107, February 18, 2022. Mr. President, House Bill 4, Water Permits Livestock on Federal Lands, was approved and passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 60. February 18, 2022, Mr. President, House Bill number 33, Community Health Services Continued Redesign Efforts, passed the House on third reading. Ayes 59, noes 1. Message number 113, February 18, 2022. Mr. President, the House adopted the Committee of the the whole report failing House Bill number 38, Contracts in Restraint of Trade. Ayes 17, noes 42, excused 1. The bill has been indefinitely postponed. Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Before we move to introduction, reading or reference of bills, do we have any privileges of the floor? Let's go back to Senator Case. Chairman Case,
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
please do.
Permission to brag.
Please do.
Mr. President, you know, I didn't pay much attention to what was going on Friday. It was a pretty busy time around here, but I'm driving home, get home kind of late Friday night, and there's a school bus parked right where you make the Rollins Junction turn. I thought, something's up, something's up. Drove past that school bus, drove into town, get past the McDonald's. The fire trucks are lined up in Lander for the big chivalry. And it was a very big chivalry, Mr. President, and it's because the Lander boys swim team 3A won their 26th state championship in a row.
26.
Now that's a dynasty, Mr. President, that is really unequaled. There's only like 3 or 4 schools that have in the country that have any kind of dynasty like that. It's really an amazing story of this team that's been doing that for so long. So very proud to brag. I think you've been following them a little bit, haven't you, Mr. President?
Yes, actually, their coach, Shauna Morgan, if I can say without saying where, but she was on a sports show out in the far west, which is broadcast across the state on internet, and brought onto that show just simply because of her very successful history with the swim program there. And what a program indeed, 26 titles.
It's really incredible. So this coach, she began as the assistant girls coach in 2005, and she served alongside the boys coach, who's really well known and passed away suddenly, but Bruce Gresley, who created this dynasty. So she still coaches the girls and she coaches the boys, head coach, been the head coach for a number of years, and that dynasty has absolutely continued. In fact, at a local meet in Lander, the team scored, that made the state record for a relay. It is the 11th fastest time for that relay in the nation, Mr. President. It's astounding. They have, out of 29 people on the team, 25 qualified for state. It's just, you know, they have a big, strong bunch of seniors, but it goes all the way through. And honestly, it's a really small town to have put together this kind of a dynasty. They practice twice a day, all season long. They work hard. They deserve this. And I'm so very proud of them, Mr. President. And I will say that marvelous radio show that is in your neck of the woods, they did a fine job there too. So thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for the opportunity.
We're proud of them. All of us are proud of them. Chairman Kays, pass on word to them. They got a standing ovation from the Senate. Senator Schuler, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. For those of you who didn't know, I think most of you probably do, the Wyoming School Board Association is in town, so we have school board members around, and I'm proud to introduce one of ours finest up here in the gallery, Mr. Dan Wheeler, and I think our assistant superintendent maybe, and is still, oh, he's over here. Dr. Ingalls is on this side, and our Special Services Director, Matt Williams, is over here. I'm proud to have them here. And also, while I'm at it, we also have a county commissioner from UNT County here, Brent Hatch. So I'd like to have you give a warm welcome to all 4 of these gentlemen.
Welcome to the Senate. Senator Baldwin,
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
please do.
Thank you. And they're behind me, and you saw them before I did, but I'd like to introduce and welcome our county commissioners. I think there's only 2 of them up there, am I right?
That's correct.
Yeah, the other one's playing hooky. If they would please stand. Are they still there?
There they are behind the
They are.
glass.
Mr. Jerry Harmon and Mr. Jerry Hansen from Lincoln County. We appreciate you making the trip over here, and I'd like the Senate to welcome these folks to the Senate, please.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Senate. County has a little extra workload these days. Senator Cooper,
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
please do.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to add to what the senator from the home of the great swim team added in. My grandsons have been competing against those swimmers for about 6 years now, and they are just a phenomenal bunch of young athletes. They're a pleasure to be around. They're gentlemen. They're great athletes, and they are a real asset to the state of Wyoming. I've got two gentlemen I'd like to introduce you to. One of them is the chief of the Park County Fire District Number 2, Mr. Jerry Parker, up here. The second gentleman is the president of the Wyoming State Fire Advisory Board. He's also chief of Sublette Unified Fire Department, and more importantly, he's my nephew, Mr. Shad Cooper. Gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen, and welcome to the Senate. Glad to have you. I think I saw Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
Please do.
Members of the 66th, good morning. I want to introduce a friend that I know a lot of you met, but this is the first time he's been here when we're in session. He comes to us with a storied career with the Computation and Information Department at LSU, and most recently with various positions at the University of Illinois. And today, with distinction, he serves as the president of our University of Wyoming. Ed Seidel, right up there in the gallery. They're here. Well, folks.
President Seidel, welcome to the Senate. Thank you for coming over. Appreciate it. Senator Steinmetz,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Privilege of the floor.
please do.
All right, thank you. I would like to introduce you all to our good friends, the Haases, up in the gallery on this side. We have Kirk Haas, who is the chairman of the Republican Party in Goshen County. He's also a firefighter and serves on one of our city councils in my district. His lovely wife, Stephanie, who holds down the fort and is able to help him do all these activities, and Liam, their son, who is here in online school and a regular resident here up in the gallery. So please give them a warm Senate welcome.
Thank you for attending the Senate today. Further privileges. Let's go back to Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, privilege of the floor.
Please do.
I thought maybe you thought I was going to adjourn us for lunch or something. I'm last in line.
We'll deny that second. Go ahead.
Fellow senators, join me in welcoming from the best town on earth, Upton, members of the Weston 7 School Board, Ty Miller, Diana White, Curtis Rankin, and Mark Mitchell.
Welcome, Upton.
Welcome.
Please stand. So
Best town on earth. One more continued privilege, please.
Please do.
Senators, I'd like you to join me standing in a moment of silence. At the front of the room is a portrait I had done of Senator Christensen. And just a quick moment of silence and thoughts for his family and all he's done for this body and this state. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Rothfuss,
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have the privilege of the floor?
please.
To begin, I'd like to say that portrait of Leland, I think, captures everything about Leland that comes to mind when I think of Leland. And in particular, it's that smile on his face, that warmth. And I really appreciate the good majority leader bringing that and sharing that with us. It's a wonderful, wonderful way of capturing that memory. Thank you. But Mr. President, I wanted to follow up on, there was a discussion obviously about swimming around the state and the magnificent performance of our friends in Lander, and 26 Pete is amazing. Regrettably, the good boys of Laramie could only five-peat this year, not having 21 prior years of championships. But I'd still like the chamber to congratulate the students of Laramie, the men's swimming team of Laramie for their 5th consecutive for a swimming championship. Also to be matched by, it's not as timely, but the 5th consecutive championship by the women's swimming team for 4A at Laramie High School. So if we're talking about swimming, they did a pretty good job this last weekend as well, Mr. President.
Congratulations to those state championships.
And I will note, Mr. President, that I got to watch those Lander boys a few times this season, and they swim fast.
Impressive.
Real fast. Thank you.
Thank you. Who is standing first? Floor leader.
Thank you. I was a little remiss. I did not say, the artist is Tim Mandes from Casper, has also done some portraits of the governor and sorted, and I was very remiss because his work is second to none.
I would say
Thank you.
captured Leland as we know him. I
Yeah.
walked past that, got all choked up, and he captured the Leland we know.
Yep.
Senator Baldwin.
Quick shout out, I want to switch from swimming to wrestling and just congratulate the Kemmer 2A boys team on their regional championship. Small team, but mighty wrestlers. They won the regional championship this last weekend. I'm thinking they're going to go on and win state 2A championship. So let's give them a hand if we could.
Congratulations. Thank you. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, I think it's right and fitting that today that we have 31 senators sitting in the chamber, one of our colleagues. I just hope that we don't see fit to make that permanent, Mr. President.
We'll excuse you for that one. Let's go ahead. All right. Is there anything else? Have we got a computer up and running over there with the clerk? Good. And before you leave, sir, when you can, I cannot hear anything. Okay, thank you. No. Everybody speak loud. Imagine that. Thank you. Senator Hicks.
I have a hammer up in my office. I can run up there and get it if you need it.
We'll see how
to
the
get that
closet work
speaker
goes, but
working.
thank you for offering. Okay, introduction, reading, and reference of bills. Senate File 1, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 1, General Government Appropriations, sponsored by the Joint Appropriations Committee.
Senate File 1, General Government Appropriations, sponsored by the Joint Appropriations Committee. Pursuant to Joint Rule 14-2B, Senate File 1 is referred directly out to Committee of the Whole. Bills on second reading. Let's do this. Let's insert here standing committee reports for second reading. Go ahead, reader.
February 18, 2022, Mr. President, Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 12, Airport Restaurant Liquor Licenses, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. Senator Nethercott, Chairman. February 18, 2022, Mr. President, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 47, Carbon Storage and Sequestration Liability. respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Beitman, Cooper, Rothfuss, and Wasserberger. Senator Anderson, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Now bills on second reading. Senate File 13, a second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 13, temporary delegation of parental authority.
There are no amendments. Senate File 13, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 18, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 18, County Road Maintenance Fund amendments.
There is an amendment. Please read in the amendment. Let's hold for just a moment. Let's go to Chairman Landon.
Mr. President, I had forgotten we do have another second reading amendment, but was going to alert the Senate to an amendment that might be forthcoming. So carry on, and
On
I'd
this
be
Senate
glad
file.
to jump
Should we
up
just set this back for a moment, sir?
I think that would, we really don't have time to do that. So, Mr. President, what I will do is bring an amendment on third reading. We got a little overzealous on a standing committee amendment. We need to return some language into the bill. I don't think it's a terribly controversial move, but carry on, Mr. President. We'll just look for that on third reading.
Plan for that. Thank you for the anticipation
Thank you.
there. Okay, appreciate it, Chairman Landon. Read in the amendment, please.
Senate File 18, second reading amendment number 1, page 1, line 5, delete.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 18, and members of the body, I'm still working with the County Commissioners Association on this, so at this point in time, I'm going to withdraw this amendment, bar any objections.
Absent objection, second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 18 has been withdrawn. Senate File 49, second reading in the Senate file.
Senate File 49, repeal of specified state boards and commissions.
Thank you. There are no amendments. Senate File 49, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 73 is second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 73, codifying the Institutional Land Fund.
There are no amendments. Senate File 73, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Bills on third and final passage.
Yeah.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a consent list?
Yes, sir, I do. Mr. President, we do have a consent list. I move the third reading consent list, which is follows. Senate File 3, radioactive materials, transport fee. Senate File 8, weed and pest reorganization. Senate File 25, district judge positions, authorization. Senate File 27, dissolution of county boards, authority. Senate File 29, liability for governmental health care work providers, amendment. Senate File 31, absenteeism and truancy. Senate File 32, K-3 reading assessment and intervention program. Senate File 33, codification of the education resource block grant model. Senate File 35, electric vehicle charging stations, regulation exemption. Senate File 38, monthly ad valorem tax revisions. Senate File 46, solid waste cease and transfer program funding. Senate File 98, federal emergency COVID-19 relief funding limitations.
Thank you. Would anybody like any of these Senate files removed from the consent list? Senator Cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that Senate File 32 please be removed from the consent list.
Absent objection, Senate File 32 removed from the consent list. Would anybody else like any of these files removed from the consent list? Senator Scott?
Senate File 3, the radioactive materials transport fee.
Senate File 3. Absent objection, Senate File 3 is removed from consent list. Would anyone like any of these files removed from the consent list? With that, Senate File 8, Weed and Pest Reorganization. Senate File 25, District Judge Positions Authorization. Senate File 27, Dissolution of County Boards Authority. Senate File 29, Liability for Government Healthcare Providers Amendment. Senate File 31, Absenteeism and Truancy. Senate File 33, Codification of the Education Resource Block Grant Model. Senate File 35, Electric Vehicle Charging Stations Regulation and Exemption. Senate File 38, Monthly Ad Valorem Tax Revisions. Senate File 46, Solid Waste Cease and Transfer Program Funding. Senate File 98, Federal Emergency COVID-19 Relief Funding Limitations. Roll call, please.
On the consent list, Anderson. Baldwin. Beitman. Boner. Bouchard. Case. Cooper. Driscoll. Ellis. French. Murphy. Guru. Hicks. Hutchings. James. Kinski. Kolb. Cost. Landon. McEwen. Nethercott. Pappas. Perkins. Rothfuss. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. Wasserberger. President Dockstetter. On the consent list, 30 aye. Senate File 8, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 8, 29 aye, 1 conflict. Senate File 25, are there any changes? Bouchard, aye to no. Closing vote. James, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 25, 28 aye, 2 no. Senate File 27, are there any changes? Wasserberger, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 27, 29 aye, 1 no. Senate File 29, are there any changes? James, conflict? Bouchard, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 29, 28 aye, 1 no, 1 conflict. (28) aye, 1 no, 1 conflict. Senate File 31, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 31, 30 aye. Senate File 33, are there any changes? Cost, I to know. Hicks, I to know. Schuler, I to know. Rothfuss, I to know. Guru, I to know. Case, I to know. Landon, I to know. Cooper, I to know. Steinmetz, I to know. Kinsky, I to know. Furphy, I to know, sir. Baldwin, I to know.
Perkins, I to know.
Perkins, I to know. Kolb, I to know. Driscoll, I to know. Nethercott, I to know. Wasserberger, I to know. Pappas, I to know. Anderson, I to know. Hutchings, I to know.
Dockstetter, no.
Dockstetter, I to know. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 33, 9 aye, 21 no. Senate File 35, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 35, 30 aye. Senate File 38, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 38, 30 aye. Senate File 46, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 46, 30 aye. And Senate File 98, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 98, 30 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the Senate, Senate Files 8, 25, 27, 29, 31, 35, 38, 46, and 98 have passed the Senate. Senate File 33, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majorities of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 33 has failed to pass the Senate. Bill's now on third reading. Senate File 3, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 3, Radioactive Materials Transport Fee, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, an act relating to commercial vehicle fees.
There are no amendments. Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, when you look at this bill, virtually all it does make a few corrections, but all it really does is raise fees, provide more money to support this particular governmental program. The Constitution is quite clear. Article 3, Section 33, origin of revenue bills. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives. The Senate may propose amendments as in case of other bills. I am aware that the various attorneys have interpreted their way around that, but on the plain language of the Constitution, this bill is a Senate file is unconstitutional.
Further discussion on Senate File 3. Chairman Landon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the good senator from Natrona County who also brought up this issue, I believe, upon introduction. I would just say this, that first of all, there is not any intention of your Transportation Committee for any nefarious action here as we split up the bills. Some went to the Senate, some went to the House. And traditionally, in all my years in the state Senate, some of these fee-raising bills have started here in the Senate. If you have an interest, I am sorry that this is on third reading today, Mr. President, but I have the opinion of our own Attorney General back in 2009. I have information on the United States Supreme Court, which has ruled on this. And really, the key is that if a bill is really not for the purpose of the general provisions of government, is raising money instead for a particular program such as this, there isn't any problem with it. Our attorneys have expressed the same thing to me. So by your vote today, you will decide whether or not you think this is constitutional or not. I would just say that we have passed quite a few bills during my time that raise a fee for a specific thing. This is not raising fees for the general obligations of government. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Mr. President. And to add to that, please understand that this is just a correction of the fee that was there. It's just an inflationary issue. That the fee is not that we need additional funds. We're not looking to. We're trying to correct what was a fee set long time ago, and we're just adjusting it now for today's times. So the amount of increase really only covers the inflationary pressure amount from the time it was originally set till now.
Further discussion on Senate File 3. Further discussion. Ready for the question? Senate File 3, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the Senate, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The Chief Clerk will call the roll, please, on Senate File 3.
Senate File 3 roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? No. French? No. Murphy? Aye. Guru?
Aye.
Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. James? No. Kinski? Aye. Cole? No. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas?
Aye.
Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll, aye to no. Cooper, aye to no. Closing vote. Nethercott, no to aye. Hicks, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 3, 16 aye, 14 no.
Senate File 3, having received the affirmative vote, majorities of members elected to the Senate. Senate File 3 has passed the Senate. Senate File 32. Reading clerk, read the Senate file.
Senate File 32, K3 Reading Assignment and Intervention Program, sponsored by the Education Committee, an act relating to reading assessment and intervention.
Senator Cost.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask have this held back for a day. The amendment is not in agreement between myself and the LSO right now, so we're trying to get it.
Absent objection, we will hold this back a day. Yep, Senator Cost held back a day.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have the privilege of the floor?
Please do.
Mr. President, we've reached that time in the legislative session that we reach in about 5 out of every 7 legislative sessions,
Yes.
when it's Senator Landon's birthday. He's about to come back in. When it's Senator Landon's birthday. And I think the chamber, once again, as we do most every year, should celebrate that by singing to the good senator and celebrating with him one more year in the legislature. With that,
Everybody stand.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Senator. Happy birthday to you. Yeah. And
Senator Landon, a few words, and I think we're getting a little better at that rendition. So go ahead, Senator.
Well, I tried to pick up on that, Mr. President. I'm not sure about that, but I would say that I kind of staggered to the tape on this one, but I'm just glad to make another one. And can't think of a better group to spend my birthday with right here. So thank you, Senator. That was
Thank you,
nice of you
Senator.
to embarrass me like that. Thank you.
Keep running for the tape. Appreciate your work. Thank you. Senator Steinmetz,
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor, please.
please do.
Thank you. I wanted to introduce the Senate to 2 of my good commissioners from Niobrara County, Elaine Griffith and Pat Wade. Welcome to the Senate.
Welcome to the Senate. Glad to have you here. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we're at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file. You've heard the motion. Excuse me, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
Thank you. We're ready to go to work there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Looks like Senator Cost, you're in charge of the Senate, sir.
Committee of the Whole will please come to order. First bill for our consideration is Senate File 28. Reading clerk, will you read the bill?
Senate File 28, Sex Offender Termination of Duty to Register Amendments, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, an act relating to criminal history records. It was referred to Committee Number 1, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. No, Senator French. Senator Nethercott, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Nethercott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, to do so with a due pass recommendation of Senate File 28, Sex Offender Duty to Register Termination Amendments. Good senators, vote it up or vote it down. But good senators, I did want to bring this bill to your attention. The good Joint Judiciary Committee did. This particular bill draft is based on a Wyoming Supreme Court opinion that came before the committee based on the Wyoming Sex Offender Registry Act. And it deals with an issue that may or may not be fair based on your own decisions about how that act applies. But generally, the facts of that case, I think, are important for this body to consider today. That fact being that the defendant in that case, or the subject of the litigation, was considered a Wyoming sex offender. However, he was convicted in 1994, and he was convicted of a sex crime where his victim actually was older than the age of 16, which is an unusual case because currently under the law at that time, if the victim was under 16, you did not have to, or over 16, you did not have to register as a sex offender. If a victim was under the age of 16, you of course did have to register as a sex offender, and you were over the age of 18. So unique facts in this case that at the time that Mr. Harrison was convicted, he did not need to register. Fast forward to his life 15 years later, where he did not have to register, completed the terms of his sentencing without violations of law. He was then required to register. He immediately complied with the law at that time and registered under our laws for a period of 15 years consecutively. He tried to be removed from the sex offender registry, which at the time from his conviction would have been about 25 years. Of course, he wasn't on the registry for all 25 years, just the 15 of those. The court said, no, you need to register consecutively for 25 years on the registry, and denied his request to register 25 years later. So if you think about it, the defendant probably was a young man at the time of his conviction, later becomes married with kids, a mortgage, a house, a job, then has to go on the sex offender registry. So the court said, regardless of when your conviction was, we don't really care how long ago. The law requires you to be on the registry consecutively for a period of 25 years. And so, policy question for this body to consider, vote it up, vote it down, but certainly whether or not you want it to be consecutively registered on the registry or based on associated with the time of conviction or when the person should have registered. So questions for the committee, vote it up, vote it down, something that the Joint Judiciary Committee wanted this body to consider.
Is there any comments? Question being called. All those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Ayes have it. Division's been called. All those in favor, please stand. Opposed? I'm a yes. Final vote was 14-14, so bill fails. Senate, we'll need to do a roll call. Thank you.
Senate File 28, roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Driscoll? Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. James? No. Kinski? No. Cole? No. Cost? Cost?
No.
No. Landon? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. Wasserberger? No. Driscoll? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Closing vote? Closing vote closed. Senate File 28, 9 aye, 21 no.
Pursuant to SR 65, I'm sorry, the roll vote's been called. Let's see if I can read the right one. Senate File 28, having failed a roll call vote pursuant to SR 6-SA, is deemed indefinitely postponed. The next bill for your consideration, Senate File 24. Will the reading clerk please read?
Senate File 24, Pharmacist and Pharmacy Technician Practice, sponsored by the Labor Committee, an act relating to professions and occupations. It was referred to Committee Number 10, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, and McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
Senator Baldwin, what's your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 24, Pharmacist and Pharmacy Technician Practice, do pass. And for explanation of the bill, I will turn you to the senator in the northwest corner of our chamber, Senator Bouchard.
Senator Bouchard?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, let me pull the bill out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 24, Pharmacist and Technician Practice. What this bill does, in essence, is it allows the same thing that we've been doing all during COVID to just continue to happen. Basically, all the supervision that happens when a pharmacist gives vaccinations, everything that we put in under emergency legislation actually worked out very well. And so that's what this bill does. It just codifies it and makes it permanent. There's nothing in this bill that's scary. Very simple language. Has the updates for interns that are working. And this is all really important as we have new people coming into the pharmaceutical world. It just puts everything in place so we just continue to operate as we did under COVID. So ask for your favorable vote on this bill. It's a simple bill.
Discussion? Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a question here under this scenario. Who would be responsible for a tort or a lawsuit to defend that? Is it going to be the technician or would it be the pharmacist under this scenario in that case of an immunization? So just curious as to how that would work out and who the responsible entity would be.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This doesn't change anything from where it's at. The pharmacist is responsible, although not directly hands-on. The pharmacist is still in charge or responsible for that pharmacy technician. Part of what the discussion is that the education, the supervision, the training has all been done, and this has more to do than just COVID injections. This is injections, flu injections, et cetera, that pharmacists and pharmacy technicians are doing now. So it still falls back to the pharmacists, as they still are responsible for the supervision and training, et cetera.
Other discussion? Discussion? Hearing none, are you ready for the question? Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion to adopt Senate File 24, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Motion, let's see if I can get to the right spot here. The motion having passed, let's see. There we go. Senate File 24 has passed the Committee of the Whole. I'll get a little quicker here. Next bill, Senate File 23. Will the reading clerk please read?
Senate File 23, Nursing Home Administrators, an act relating to professions and occupations sponsored by the Labor Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 10, which turned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, and McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
Senator Baldwin, what's your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 23, Nursing Home Administrators, do pass. And for explanation, we're going to stay in the northwest corner, but a little bit closer to this side. We're going to go to Senator Furphy for the explanation of this bill.
Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill just updates the process for licensing nursing home administrators and also updates the board of nursing home administrators. So if you look at page 2 of the bill, basically 106 says that our criminal justice agencies in this state will provide background information on any applicants to be a nursing home administrator. If you look at the section 201 below that, that's saying nationally, these administrator applicants have to submit fingerprints. Then on page 3, it talks about the composition of the board itself. So what we're doing on lines 8 through 12, we're eliminating the ex officio member of the director of the Department of Health because they really have never participated on this board, so there's no need to have them as a member. If you look at line 15 of the bill, so what it's showing is the makeup now of the board. One member will be a medical doctor. One will be a registered nurse. One will be a consumer representative selected from the general public. And the next 2 appointees shall be maintain employment as a nursing home. So, so once again, on page 4, it just talks about requiring fingerprinting as necessary. On page 5, they will have to complete continuing education as established by the board. And Mr. Chairman, that's the basis of this bill. It's a good little bill, and I move approval. Thank you.
Any discussion? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I think I'm okay with this bill, but I just wanted to ask the following question. Having spent a great deal of my time over the last 4 years in these institutions, doing what I could to help my folks, repeatedly ran into questions and concerns by our administrators and our healthcare professionals out across there on so many fronts. But sometimes it would be, is there any way that you can get rid of the bureaucracy? A lot of times we like to rail against our brothers and sisters back in the Beltway, back in Washington, D.C., but every so often you check into something and you find out that that it happens to be us. And so my question on this bill is, does it do anything to exacerbate that concern that we have in those facilities, because they're stretched so thin and they're finding it so difficult to get help and to get things done and to take care of our older residents? Just a little assurance on that front if I could have it. Thank you.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This doesn't do anything to exacerbate that. Mostly what this bill does is just, the biggest thing it does is put the background checks on these folks, on the administration. Actually, the only makeup change is something that's already been happening for forever as far as the testimony we received. It doesn't really change the makeup otherwise. But I would suggest that there's something that the body would recommend for changes down the road. It's something we can discuss in the interim or another time. But this bill doesn't do anything to exacerbate, make anything worse. This bill just simply corrects some of the things historically that are in the administration.
Any other discussion? Any discussion? You ready for the question? Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 23, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That motion carries. Let me read that correctly. Senate File 23 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 101. Would the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 101, Epinephrine and Naloxone Administrative Authority, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss, an act related to public health and safety. Was referred to Committee Number 10, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, and Hutchings. Excused, Senator McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
Senator Baldwin, what is your wish?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I'm up so much today. We were going to name this Labor Day, but some people said that that was a different holiday. So I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 101, Epinephrine and Naloxone Administration Authority do pass. And for explanation of the bill, I'll take you back to the far northwest corner to Senator Rothfuss.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I bring Senate File 101, Epinephrine and Naloxone Administration Authority. It's a good little bill, Mr. Chairman. It comes out of just a circumstance within the state where over the years we've passed policies related to both of these two life-saving measures, epinephrine and naloxone. So naloxone, you remember a number of years ago, probably about 5 years ago, we passed some legislation that provided for statutory authority under something called the Emergency Administration of Opiate Antagonist Act, whereby entities where that's broadly defined would be able to get a prescription for and utilize naloxone under a circumstance where an individual is experiencing an opiate overdose. So that's a life-saving measure. And the idea there being that you don't necessarily go out and get your own prescription for the opportunity where you might overdose on opioids. You would need somebody that might be with an organization to have the authority to get that prescription and then utilize it for life-saving endeavors. At the same time, a bit longer ago, we passed legislation that would allow K-12 institutions to have on-hand EpiPens so that they could provide life-saving measures under circumstances where their students might undergo an anaphylactic reaction and then provide with emergency response and first aid as part of their first aid kit. They would need that authority to have the prescription on hand. It turns out, though, we didn't kind of cover everybody with both. So there's no ability in colleges or the university and no ability within organizations, imagine your church group or your daycare provider or your after-school program, or even, as was pointed out in public testimony, which I thought was pretty interesting, the Wyoming legislature, to have a general prescription for epinephrine so that we can have an auto-injector on hand in case somebody does experience an anaphylactic reaction and you would want that in your first aid kit. So, Mr. Chairman, this legislation simply goes into statute, and the way that it's crafted is to go into the Emergency Administration of Opiate Antagonist Act, which we passed a few years back, you'll see on page 2, change it to the Medical Treatment Act, and then simply go through the entirety of that act and allow for the opportunity for a general prescription for an epinephrine auto-injector, so an EpiPen, under the same circumstances where you would have the authority for one of those naloxone general prescriptions, thereby providing the authority to basically any entity, which you'll see defined on page 2, and it was expanded to explicitly include the University of Wyoming or Wyoming community colleges because there was some question as to whether this act previously would have covered them under entities. So just providing the clarity, I think that was the intent, but maybe not necessarily the word of law, to provide for that opportunity where if there is an emergent need for an EpiPen, it could be on hand with the first aid kit. There's already requirements under the previously existing statute for training from the pharmacy and an assurance by the pharmacy that there was justification for having need for that within your first aid kit. So it's not a general prescription for all. You would have to demonstrate specific need. But that program has worked well over the years, and we haven't heard any complaints, certainly with regard to the naloxone. This would provide broader coverage for EpiPens, and I think it could potentially provide some specific uses. I'll mention a case over this last summer where a young lady that was with a program that I administer through the university, through the Honors College, called the High School Summer Institute, had an anaphylactic reaction, and I was a bit miffed that we didn't have an EpiPen. Now, we were handy to the hospital. Everything worked out just fine. But I had been asking for unsuccessfully for a number of years to have that opportunity, and we did not have the statutory authority to have that opportunity. This would amend that and remedy that. So we just have another option on the table, an opportunity to provide life-saving measures and potentially save a life with this legislation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Discussion? Discussion? Are you ready for the question? Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a favorable recommendation, Senate File 101, say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Now, let me do that correctly. I'm sorry. Senate File 101 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration, Senate File 36. Would the reading clerk please read it in?
Senate File 36, Pharmacy Benefit Managers Act Amendments, sponsored by the Labor Committee, an act relating to pharmacy benefit managers, was referred to Committee Number 10, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Bouchard, Hutchings, and McEwen. No Senators Baldwin and Furphy. Was re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Grew, Perkins, and Steinmetz. No Senator Hicks. Excused Senator Kinski. Senator Perkins, Chairman.
Senator Baldwin, what's your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 36, Pharmacy Benefit Managers Act enhancements do pass. I believe there's an amendment with that bill.
There is an amendment. Reading clerk, would you please read in the amendment?
Senate File 36, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 4, line 2, delete.
Thank you. I move that amendment, and I will have that brought in and voted on at the appropriate time for explanation of the bill. I would turn you to somebody representing the center of our room here, Senator Hutchings.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the explanation of this bill, I'd like to take us back in history a little bit to help you focus on what I believe in layman's term will help you totally understand this bill. Maybe not totally, but good enough to vote aye. The great nation across the ocean made a compact with our colonists as they set across the seas to establish a new nation. Once the colonists began to establish businesses and become more and more independent, the great nation began to set up more and more rules, regulations, acts to encumber and burden the colonists. Moving forward in time, once the colonists won their revolution, they went about to set up a new form of government and a document to govern her. In that document, we have the First Amendment, where in the last clause, it states that it is the right of the people to petition their government for a redress of grievances. That is what Senate File 36 is all about, redress of grievances. The pharmacists coming back to their government to redress their grievances, a government which created the statute on PBM in about 2016, but like so many states, did not establish the rules of engagement. If you look in your boxes, you'll see a form that looks like this. It's a graph of all the states that have, within the last 8 years, 7, 8 years, established new laws and statutes to govern the PBM process. You'll also see a colorful chart called vertical integration. This will kind of give you an idea how at the beginning on page 1, the pharmacist, the PBM, and the insurer were just those three. The second page will show you how things progressed over time. And the third page will show you even more how the process evolved to where the PBM is now the boss of everybody, to put it lightly. So I will go over the bill as best I can, and at each step, I'll refer to each of the items on page 1 through 20 as redresses. We're going to go to page 2. We're going to look at line number 7, the Pharmacy Benefit Manager Audit Appeals Report. This language was pulled from 2 states, and this provision brings transparency to the appeal process. It allows us to track the total number of appeals filed by the pharmacy and see how many appeals are denied or upheld, reasons why the appeals were denied, and proof that they are compiled in statute, and so on. The reason for this redress is just that. This is happening to our pharmacists, and we'd like to have some kind of control over it. Page number 2, or excuse me, number 3 through 5 is a retroactive claims denial or reductions prohibited. That's the second redress. Retroactive adjustments are often assessed long after the point of sale for a prescription. PBMs play the dual role of deciding how much is reimbursed to a pharmacy or a prescription drug, then audits the pharmacy and decides if they've paid them too much. Audits are often onerous, involve hundreds of prescriptions that have been dispensed years ago. Going to page 5, redress number 3 is a transparent pharmacy reimbursement. I've given you another chart, colorful with red numbers to the side. This is one pharmacy's account of what they pay, the cost of a drug, what the plan paid, the copay, and in red, that shows you how much the pharmacist lost. If you go to the last page of that, and there were several more pages, I just didn't want to include the whole document, you'll see that this particular pharmacist for the month of October 2021 lost, just for October, lost $10,000, about $500 in his business. And we don't want that happening to our local pharmacists. So in the transparent pharmacy reimbursement program, that was also taken from another state's legislation. This is the heart of the bill, as it aims to eliminate below-cost reimbursements by PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. It states the minimum at which pharmacy benefit managers can reimburse a pharmacy in a formula which is used by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, known as CMS. PBMs cannot reimburse a pharmacy less than the national average drug acquisition cost if which is known as NADAC. If NADAC is not available, the PBM cannot reimburse in an amount less than the wholesale acquisition cost of the drug. So we'll move on to redress number 4, where we have the network adequacy issues. This is also pulled from another state's statute. This provision has been popular in PBM enhancement legislation, as it prevents superfluous standards being imposed by a PBM on a pharmacy for accreditation. I won't read everything to you, but if you have questions, we'll go ahead and get those answered for you. Redress number 5 deals with prohibited activities and contractual changes, retaliation. That's also taken from another state statute. This provision outlines the instances that will and will not be considered retaliation by a PBM to a pharmacy that exercises their right to them under this chapter of law. This section also prohibits PBMs from changing contracts without notice and agreement to the pharmacy. And that was on page 6 through 9. I was really concerned about the fiscal note on this, the assumptions, which came to the amount of $7-point-something million. So we got together last Friday and talked to the department head and talked to him about these assumptions. And during that time, at the bottom of page 9, the administration and management of a group insurance program, we found that we could save the state over $2 million by removing this section of the bill. So you will see in a second reading amendment, this particular section, 9.3-25, it goes on to page 11, line 17, will be deleted out of the bill. Definitions, we don't need to really go over those, but we will go over I believe this is the 6th redress, when we talk about policies and incentives for reimbursement. Oh, back to the definitions on, let me see, just to make sure, we are going to delete on page 13, lines 20 through 23, page 14, lines 1 through 4. There is a health benefit plan definition that will be deleted out of the bill as well. Back to redress number 6, the policies and incentives or limits on reimbursements. This language will bring existing Wyoming state statutes up to date to include pharmacies and any willing provider. Then we'll move on to page 12, licensure of a pharmacy benefit manager, waiver prohibited. This is the 7th redress. It modifies existing language to give rulemaking authority to the insurance commissioner to carry out the provisions of this chapter. More definitions. And on page 15 through 17, our 8th redress, we have the pharmacy benefit manager audits. Those are already in statute. We took some language from another state to update our statutes to include making the audits 6 months instead every 6 months, or not more than 6 months instead of every 2 years, because that would make the pharmacists have to keep a lot of data. Moving on to page 17, line 11, redress number 9, we have the maximum allowable cost offering information alternatives. This is also taken from another state's successful passage of a law. This provision adds language to existing statute that stipulates how the PBMs will reimburse Wyoming pharmacies. Finishing up the bill, we have repealers and rulemaking, but really, I think one of the most important fears that we had on this bill was again the assumptions made in the fiscal note. If you notice, the first fiscal note mentioned that was $2.4 million, mentioned that if we eliminated the ability of the insurer to have mail order deliveries of their drugs, that would cost the state $2.4 million. But there's nowhere in the bill where we're eliminating mail order. Also, the employee group insurance process was removed, so that would also help with 2.7 million, and or remove that. And moving to the national average drug acquisition cost was expected to cost 2.4 million. That is something that I believe is what our insurance company contracts with the drug manufacturer or the wholesaler, and that $2.4 million should be removed as well. We've asked that department to provide us with an updated assumption list. I haven't received that yet, but when I do, hopefully on second reading, you'll be able to see that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, long explanation of the redresses. Hopefully that gives everybody a little bit more comfort in knowing that this bill is just doing that, addressing their redresses and trying to fix our statutes that didn't include all this in the beginning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, yes, we do have an amendment. We have one amendment here. Standing committee amendment. Very, very, very simple. On page 4, line 2, we just deleted the word erroneously, after the word fraudulently. We'll put a period there. On page 5, we deleted, or we exchanged on line 16, 2552-107 to 2652-107. And on page 6, we did the same. Line 16, we changed 2552-109 to 2652-109. I ask for a favorable vote on that amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Do we have question? Question's been called. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment 1 to Senate File 36, please say aye. All those opposed, no. That amendment has passed. Now we're back on the bill. Is there any discussion on the bill? Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would applaud my friend, the senator from the southeast corner of the state, on all of her work and her excellent presentation, the exhibits that we have here. And what she is presenting to you makes a compelling case for why we need to keep this bill moving along. I'm of the persuasion, as a business person in my background, ordinarily I like just the minimal amount of regulation. The exception is these kind of situations where companies have managed to amass so much market power that they really threaten competition in an industry. These PBMs I've lived in my business life and in my personal life. In my personal life, my mother-in-law, her drugs were managed by a PBM. And I can tell you, between the auto ship and the automated attendants on the phone and trying to get the prescriptions right, we ended up taking boxes of drugs down to the drug recycling thing at the police station, you know, where you're supposed to drop off your drugs. Business-wise, everything that these local pharmacists in Wyoming are telling you is absolutely true. I owned and operated a pharmacy for 13 years. Here's how a PBM works in Wyoming. A patient is prescribed a drug new, or they're coming out of the hospital. The PBM is in the West Coast, the East Coast, wherever. They need somebody to fill that prescription. Say, go to your local pharmacy. That first dose is the most expensive because you have to get the patient all set up, okay? Then the PBM says to the pharmacy, here's $5, thank you. And here's some pittance, some fraction of reimbursement for the cost of the drug. We'll take it from here. And thereafter, it's all mail order. What little profit there is in pharmacy is in taking care of the patient thereafter. So the only portion on which any local pharmacy has any chance of making any money at all and staying in business, the PBMs take away and reimburse below cost, exactly as these exhibits say. Talk to your local independent pharmacist. If we don't rein these folks in with just a moderate level of accountability, they will close every local pharmacy in Wyoming. I know we've all heard from employers saying, we will, you know, we're saving this much with the PBM, we're saving that much with the PBM. I believe those savings are absolutely illusory. These exhibits which talk about how they as a middleman are actually making the lion's share of the money are absolutely correct. And let's assume that it's true. Let's say that there is some marginal increase in the cost to employers or to the state of Wyoming. It's coming upon the backs of your local pharmacy. I would urge that we, an affirmative vote, and that we keep this bill moving along. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nethercutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good senators, I too have interest in this bill, but I recognize the scope and size of the issue and that it's very complicated. I think we've all been approached about the pros and cons of the bill, of which I don't think that the full body has a full appreciation of. I know it's before lunch, so very poor timing on a very important bill. I share the concerns from the good senator from up north and of my Laramie County colleague. But I do know that the situation is significantly more complex than we in Wyoming probably want to appreciate. And our healthcare system, which includes pharmacies, is a national question. And so I just would like more debate, since we're on the time for us to debate the bill on committee of the whole. And this would be one of the few opportunities to hear the full discussion and information about it. What is the cost? I know that most of our cities, towns, counties, and everyone else that provides health insurance coverage, which includes those pharmacy coverage, have grave concerns about the bill and those increasing costs, which also includes private employers. So whereas I'm compelled for the local pharmacists too, and more importantly, the patients that receive these prescriptions, what are those costs and what is that larger impact? I mean, preferably, I would like to see this continue to be worked very thoughtfully for a period of time, just so we fully understand what really is going on here and all of the ramifications. So further discussion or comments about the costs to those that provide health insurance coverage with the pharmaceuticals, with the pharmacy piece, why that's such a robust conversation. So I've heard two pros. Can I hear some cons based on those members of the committee who received that testimony for a more further debate?
Senator Coe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to get some clarification on the diverse points of view on the cost of this bill. One group says it's going to cost, millions more than we currently are spending. and the other side of the coin says, no, we're going to save money. So I'd like to hear the facts on just what's going on here, because my own local hospital is adamantly against this right now because they believe it's going to cost them a lot more money because they're self-insured. So I'd like to, I'll vote to move the bill forward, but I'd like to hear more. I need to hear more about these details. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too, like good senator from Southwest, you can't hear me? I'll get closer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am really conflicted on this bill. I've heard from both sides, but I'm really, for some reason, I got this gut feeling I'm not hearing the right things from both sides. I don't get a good feeling about what I've heard on each view, and so I'm gonna vote to move this bill forward as well. But I'm really looking for someone to convince me on either side that the information that I've gotten is really true, because I don't get that feeling right now. I don't get that I'm being told the right things. So if the members of the body could help me get to that point, I might be able to support this. Or if those who are opposed to it have some good reasons for why we can't support local pharmacists and pharmacies. Is it really true that they're going to go out of business because of this, or is it not? I've gone online and I've read conflicting information as well. So I'm really conflicted, and I need the body to help me get to that decision. So thank you.
We'll go with Senator Hicks, and then after Senator Hicks, we'll go with Senator Perkins.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I won't belabor the fact that I've heard very much of the same. There's winners and losers in this bill, and losers and winners. But I have a question is this, so what's the consequences of not passing the bill? What are those consequences? Is this something that could be looked at in very depth and detail in the interim? So what is the consequences of not doing nothing now? And is there a potential remedy for this situation? So those are the two questions I have.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple thoughts. One was to answer a little bit of a question. When we did this on the re-referral, because there was an appropriation in the committee, we did have the government EGI, which is the employee group insurance. That division head came and talked to us, and his estimate was this cost to state government is $7.5 million a year. So basically, not quite $7.5 million, but roughly between $14 and $15 million a biennium to the state. And of course, that's based upon the fact that if you take certain information and you simply say, all right, if we do this, if this increases costs, that it comes through and goes to the state, then this is what we'll have to pay with respect to for government employees on their medications. And so it's interesting though, as you take a look at one of the handouts read out, the company that oversees and manages state employee health insurance program is one of these vertically integrated pharmacies. So, it kind of scratches your head. And long story short, I think it comes down to this, and I got to tell you, I'll confess that I've been preoccupied the last 8 weeks with this little thing called the state budget, and so I haven't been able to delve in and look at some of these things as hard as I would like to. But what this bill basically is asking for, and I actually had an interesting conversation with my local pharmacist. So I recently switched from a very large national chain to a local pharmacist, and so I went in there one day to get a flu shot and a booster. And while he actually was giving me the booster, he said, I want to talk to you about a pharmacy benefits manager bill. And so I was very attentive while he had the needle in my arm. But anyway, talking to him, and I've talked to him several times since then, and there was another chart that was given out by the good senator who explained this bill, talked about below cost reimbursement October report. I encourage you to look at that. what's happening, talking to my pharmacist, my local independent pharmacist tells me that right now on his list, he's got 17 medications that when you come, when he has a patient come and ask those 17 medications, 17 costs, right, 17 medications right now, and you ask, he actually subsidizes. It costs him more to get that drug and put it in the bottle and give it to you than he gets paid, than he gets reimbursed. I was going, well, how's that? And so I talked to him about that. And so what you have is, he says this is really what this bill kind of does is kind of the way that Medicare kind of does it. You find the average benefit cost, the average cost of a certain drug. And keep in mind that your pharmacist, your local pharmacist goes and buys a really big bottle of pills from either a distributor or from the pharmacy company, and he brings it to his shop, and he counts out and makes it into he puts it into littler bottles, and he puts the, he does the script, he does, he looks at your doctor's prescription, puts the instructions on there, puts it in the bottle, puts the cap on, staples the receipt to it, gives you the bag, asks you have any questions. We've all been at the pharmacy and seen how that works. And so what he does, or what kind of Medicaid, as I understand, Medicare kind of does, as talking about it, they have an average cost for that drug. So it's the average cost that pharmacies have to buy that across the nation. There's an average cost of that, and really it should be relatively the same, other than maybe it costs a little bit more to mail it from Denver to Chicago, or from California to Casper than from New York to Casper, or Atlanta to Casper. Other than a little bit of mail costs, those costs should be relatively the same amount. And then what Medicare does is it says, all right, we'll give you, and I don't remember the exact number, but basically it's $10 and I'm going to say 26 cents. I don't remember if it was $10.25 or $10.98. But they pay the pharmacist that cost plus $10.28 or whatever, $10 and whatever that change was to, read the script, produce the script, which comes in mostly electronically now, which there's I think it's like a $2 cost on these e-scripts that come in. It's like, just that alone is like $2. And then he's got to put it in his bottle. There's a cost there. He's got to have an assistant and pay for the assistant and for his own time to put it in the bottle, put it on the label, process the whole thing, get it entered in, follow all that stuff. And that's how they make their money. And so basically this bill's coming back and says, why can't we do that same thing? Why can't we figure out what this number is and get that paid? I don't know if that works, and I certainly don't want the state of Wyoming to become Medicare. What I do know is it's not right that independent pharmacists are subsidizing the cost of care for patients who come in. The other thing I don't know, right, and I've wondered about this, is I was going to that national chain and, as you go there, and you look at their hours on there, and you can go anywhere from about 9 o'clock in the morning to about 9 o'clock at night, and they get a whole half hour for lunch. And you go look in there, and I've often wondered, why in the world would I ever want to be a pharmacist when I look at the hours that they put in? They're putting in 10, 12-hour shifts. They get about a half hour off for lunch. And why are they doing that? Because that's the only way that's the only way these big chains can make money off of it. They simply do that. They simply, all right, Mr. Pharmacist, instead of having 2 pharmacists and 8 assistants, they've got 1 pharmacist and 4 assistants, and they work long, long hours. Well, okay, that's capitalism at its best, maybe, except for the fact that pharmacists can make mistakes. And if they put the wrong prescription, they type the wrong thing, if they get tired and they're working too many hours, you got the same type of issues there where you're ripe for disaster. I don't know what the answer is. I think this needs more work. I would really love to move this bill forward, and if nothing else, if we don't do anything else, simply put a date on it, so the effective date is 1 year from this was going to effect right now on July 1st of 2022. But if nothing else, put a 1-year extension on that and make it July 1st of 2023 and send it back in from study. And then what you do is I think you make the pharmacy benefit managers come in and open up their books and let's find out what is going on and how do we address this? Because we all know that prescription drugs are a significant problem. It's a problem not just in our state, but across the nation. We've got to get to the bottom of this, and if we don't have some kind of pressure on folks to come and open their books, because we don't have the authority to make them open their books and show us what's what. Unless we have something like this that says, if you don't show us and open your books, this is going to go into effect. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe and I don't want any more select committees, but we find a committee and put it in there. If we need to augment a member or two to get some more expertise there, let's do that. But let's get to the bottom of this and find out how we fix it. I don't know if this bill's the answer, but it's a start. And if we do pass it forward, it will have the ability to create some pressure and get to the bottom of this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the direction this debate's going because I share a lot of the concerns that have been raised, but I certainly am convinced that this is a pressing issue that is affecting the people of Wyoming, affecting our budget, certainly affecting our smaller and individual pharmacists around the state, the private practices. There are a few concerns that haven't been raised that I think are important for us to look at. And again, I'll say, similar to what the good Senator from Casper said, that maybe this legislation isn't perfect, but I would like to see it move forward once we've started. I actually voted against introduction because I knew that there were a lot of issues that we had to wrap our minds around and work on. But once we've introduced it, now it's time to do some work. And this is a good bill for us to do some work on and see if we can get it into better shape. One of the concerns that I had, though, was that it did a lot towards addressing the concerns of our smaller pharmacists, but didn't really address it from the state's interests as well, where there are a lot of unnecessary costs that are part of the transaction series that are basically scraped away from our private pharmacists, right? We know that they're being underpaid effectively for prescribing. Oftentimes they're subsidizing the prices themselves, as we heard from the good senator. But there's a lot that goes on, from my understanding, in these vertically integrated healthcare providers and insurers, where when you have the insurance entity and the PBM at the same time, there's not a lot of friction between their decision-making process. It's not necessarily in the insurance provider's interest anymore to hold back the costs of the PBM. So it's my understanding that you end up with circumstances where, for example, name brand drugs are used preferably over generic drugs, so that the billing can be created in such a manner that there are coupons or rebates that are provided so that the company, which again is now vertically integrated, has profits back in one department, and effectively we're paying that from the state of Wyoming on another hand. It's honestly something I don't totally understand. How is that type of practice affecting the state of Wyoming? How does EGI deal with these types of coupons and rebates? Do we have policies in place that prohibit and exclude them? It would certainly be reasonable for us to have those policies, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that are paying those bills. I don't see anything in this legislation that specifically addresses that concept of, if there is a FDA-approved generic available, that should be prescribed unless there is a circumstance where it's specifically directed by the healthcare provider, the medical side. And it's my understanding that there certainly are cases where a name brand is desired over the generic equivalent because there are therapeutic or biologic differences. And that's fine if there's a justification for that. But if the justification is just, hey, we get a better coupon if we're paying full freight when a generic's available, I'm not sure that's best for the people of Wyoming. So I too have a lot of questions. I have a lot of concerns. I don't know that this legislation is perfect, but I share the general sentiment of the chamber that we have a real problem here. And getting back to the good senator from Sheridan County that knows this and has lived this, I appreciate his insight and his experience on it. There's a lot here that we need to address. I hope we'll move this forward and try and find ways to address it. I do like the idea potentially of extending the effective date so that we have another iterative cycle to get it right, but maybe there's some things that we can do this session to help both support our pharmacy, but honestly, as the good senator from Laramie County said, let's support the people of Wyoming, let's support the patients, and I don't know that we're necessarily providing the best solution for them at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, following on that and some of the other debate, I think we have a real problem. I've heard the concern over, are the numbers accurate or not? That's something with time we ought to be able to get a good understanding. I will tell you from years of trying to deal with some of these things in Committee 10, that the system for drug pricing in this country is awful. You're dealing with large things in interstate commerce. And in my judgment, the federal government has botched it thoroughly on a number of occasions. The system that Medicaid has, I can't describe it as rational. It does create a circumstance where they grant certain favored institutions tremendous discounts. And that's what's financing some of those institutions. And that's a problem. I think some of the discussion we just heard from the last senator on there may be some incentives in there that cause, Mr. Chairman, the national chains to behave in some ways that maximize their revenue, but do quite a bit of harm to the rest of us. And I'm a little concerned that some of those you have to have the power to regulate interstate commerce, deal with, and we don't have that power. Federal government does, and it doesn't show, in my judgment, much chance of reacting rationally and using its power to fix the problems. So we're going to have, okay, we may well identify a problem and say that the real fix we can't do. Mr. Chairman, I too would urge us to move the bill forward, at least to third reading. I'm intrigued by the idea of a delayed effective date. That sometimes is very good at focusing response from the outside parties, trying to really focus on what the problems are and give us good information that we can act on. I commend Mr. Chairman, I commend the senators in Committee 10 for taking this one on and looking at it hard in the interim, because it's been a growing problem, and you can see the reality of the problem by the number of independent pharmacies we have lost in the state. And it's been a slow process. We had one in Casper that, when my dad was practicing medicine, was the cheapest one in town, was able to use their knowledge to get the prices down, and that was the one he'd recommend to the patients that asked. But they're gone. They have not been able to survive in the modern environment, which is dominated by some of these big operations. I know I get pitched all the time, you know, buy all my medicines mail order, and I don't do it. In part because, as the Senate knows, I use insulin. And I'm afraid it would freeze in my mailbox, literally, which destroys its value if I were to get that mail order. And I think the pharmacists are a potentially very valuable resource, healthcare resource, that I don't think we're using as effectively as we should. And maybe that's a separate problem. The difficulty I have is that the structure of the system is such that if we go all out with the way this bill is doing, I'm afraid we will run the cost up quite a bit. And we need to see if we can fine tune what we do, target relief where it is needed, and maybe give the customers a reasonable choice. Because there's some things we can do to give the customers a choice. You can get it a little cheaper nationally, the mail order. You pay a little more, get it locally, but you have a source of advice, a source of help if you have trouble with the drugs. And historically, your independent pharmacist was able to save quite a bit of money. We had a program that we started, ran successfully for a number of years, where we were advising people, getting pharmacists to advise people with multiple prescriptions on how they could cut their costs down. And the average savings, and this was 15 years ago, thereabouts, was $2,000 a patient. And when you looked at it, half of the savings was looking at what the patient was saying, taking and saying, you don't need this. And some of those were over-the-counter drugs. That this thing that you're taking is unnecessary. And the other half was coming from the pharmacist's professional knowledge of what could be substituted, Mr. Chairman, for what drug. And that was a very valuable resource, and I think we're losing that to the extent we ever had it. But there are substitutions that can be made, and they were knowledgeable of it. They were rarely overturned by the doctor saying, no, this isn't going to work for this patient. These people are pretty sharp on drugs. So there are some real possibilities there. That program went away because the market for it disappeared when Medicare Part D came in and the feds were paying for it and people weren't going to ask their pharmacist anymore, how can I save? The Part D was so complicated and the fed were paying it, people didn't. So I think the committee is onto something here. I'm not sure this remedy is going to be the one we ultimately need to adopt. But we need to do something. Absent a better idea, I like the idea of a delayed effective date. I've seen that used very well, Mr. Chairman. Whether or not it'll produce results in this case, I don't know. But we have a problem we have not been able to solve. And my compliments to the Labor Committee, the Joint Interim Labor Committee, taking this on, even if the product isn't perfect yet, and it's a difficult one to deal with in a 20-day session, and that it is. Sometimes in a budget session, you can learn some things that then bring you back for a general session. And maybe that's what we need to do, and maybe one of the devices we've talked about is the way to go, and maybe there's some other ways we can grant some temporary relief. Mr. Chairman, but this is a major problem that we need to start making some progress on, or we simply aren't going to have local independent pharmacies. Mr. Chairman, I wish I could be more definitive than that. I've been out of this just long enough, so I don't have confidence in proposing specific remedies. But you do have some problems to answer. One is, are the numbers right? And two is the problem where we can get at it effectively, because some of the problem is clearly in interstate commerce.
I'll go Senator McCown, and then you. Senator McCown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to try to be brief. As we look at this over the interim time period, I kind of thought about it from a business perspective. What if we were talking about bananas and I had to buy bananas from a place in Bentonville, Arkansas? And that's the only place I could buy bananas. And they weren't going to tell me what the bananas cost until after I sell them and they come back and give me some money for the bananas. You can't run a business that way. And the second thing is, that place in Arkansas is going to take care of something else first. I'm going to be an afterthought. And as we look at this, the vertical integration that's going on, we have insurance companies that are now buying up PBMs and PBMs that are now buying up pharmacies CVS, never mind. There's a large pharmacy that owns a large PBM. And it starts with the third letter in the alphabet for both of them. But they're going to control the whole vertical. And that's a monopoly. And then you want to exacerbate it worse? Insurance companies are subsidized by the government. So you got this poor pharmacist out there who doesn't know what his costs are. He's trying to sell stuff. He's losing money. And yeah, it's going to cost us a little bit more. Do I think it's going to cost us $7.5 million? I don't know. And I don't know how anybody knows, because as we dug into this for months, you can't get information from a PBM. It's about as transparent as an opaque piece of glass. They keep it hidden. It's a $5 billion industry, and they're lording over these little guys. So as we dig into this, yeah, the cost's probably going to go up. I don't know how much, but right now they're living off these guys' backs. They're selling them stuff for more than they can sell it for, or they're selling it for, and they don't even know what's going on. And I've met with 3 different independent pharmacists, and they've walked me through their business model and the books, and I just scratch my head. It would be the same as me buying bananas from one of my competitors and trying to compete with them. And that's what's going on with the PBMs. Can we fix it? It might be difficult, but I will tell you this, we definitely need to try. Because as we found out in the last committee meeting, there are a lot of small pharmacies in Wyoming. There's a lot of small pharmacies in small towns in Wyoming. And if they go away, it's going to cause a huge undue burden on a lot of people will be driving hundreds of miles or tens of 50 miles, whatever, wherever you live, you know where your next closest big city is. It's a drive in the winter with snow and wind, and it's not fun. But at the end of the day, once those guys go away, rural Wyoming is not going to have an option. They're going to have to go to the big box stores, and they're going to have to eventually get prescriptions mailed. And I just want to say one other thing about that. When you go see a pharmacist, if you have questions, he helps you or she helps you with the administration of the drugs. They tell you what you can look forward to and what problems you might have. And you got help right there. And I'm going to tell you, TRICARE is my insurance. Never mind. This military place provides me insurance, and they're pushing for a mail order. And I tried it once. I got a 90-day supply of something. I don't even know what it was. It wasn't the right thing. So it's not real efficient. And I'm going to close on that. I guess I'm a little passionate about this for 2 reasons. 1, rural Wyoming, and 2, small businesses, which are the backbone. They pay most of our taxes, and most of that money stays here. And if we shut them down, and I asked some of the county government guys who came into the committee meeting and said, this is going to cost my county X dollars. So I asked them, what are you going to lose if you lose a pharmacy? And the answer was, nothing. Drugs aren't taxed. Like, wait a minute. They're in a building, they got to pay property taxes, they got employees to spend money in your town, pay sales tax, liquor tax, gas tax, probably pretty soon toilet paper tax. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's a cost if you shut those down too. And the velocity of money, what happens in a small town, if you can keep it there and turn it 4 or 5 times instead of sweep it out, the community gets much stronger and the economy grows. So I said I'd be short. I think this is the longest I've ever talked, so I apologize for that. But this is something we need to solve, and I wanted to express the way I'm looking at it because it's a little bit different than everybody else's view on it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that we haven't talked about is, and it was brought up, but who owns the PBM? And asking these questions in committee several times at multiple meetings, we couldn't even get the answer from the people who were testifying. This is so behind the scenes of what's going on. And we threw around the $500 billion industry. But the last time I looked at this in committee, what I had found is one insurance company that owns a PBM, there's 500 million in revenue just for that one insurance company behind the scenes in a PBM. So you've got the insurance company that owns the PBM, and they are using that whole coupon structure to steer things for their benefit. And sadly, when it gets down to the pharmacist level, they are not they're the ones cut out. There's clawbacks. They could sell something over their counter, and they have agreements that automatically they can pull it out of their account and take that money back. So the insurance company through the PBM can just pull that money back, and they can't take the drugs back, obviously. They put stuff over their counter, and it's gone. It's perishable to that business. Done. As far as the state issue and interstate, the commerce across state line, this has already been kicked to the states. There's 20 states that have done this, have worked on this type of legislation. So if we just took what we have here and just took the transparency part of this bill, then we could start seeing who owns what, how much revenue, what's going on here. Because the one thing that I did not hear from anyone testifying is that these PBMs were losing any money. They are the ones that have amassed big revenues. They are not losing money. We even had our university testify, which I was really surprised to see that. But they did come in and testify that they work within these community pharmacies. And what they are seeing is this is affecting them so bad that they are worried that if they close, the university will not have a place to continue their program and have interns, a place to put interns in our state. So the university has also did talk about how this is really playing out, similar to what the senator from Sheridan had said. They talked about that whole model in the background, supports exactly what was said earlier. So this is a real problem. It can be handled in the state. 20, I think maybe more than 20 states have handled this, and the sky didn't fall. I mean, you had all these people that have testified that the sky is going to fall, but that's not what we're seeing in the other states. Because once that transparency kicks in, now everybody's working in the open, and we can see. I mean, you could see if the PBM's taking the hundreds of $billions, but we're doing this on the backs of these pharmacists because they showed us they came in with sheets, Excel spreadsheets, showing us what their profits were on some drugs, and they were showing how things were even manipulated. You could see the reports going from one time to another. Let's say a 3-month period, you could see them raise the prices of some of these drugs. And I want you just a basic, easy way to look at this. You go to the pharmacist, and they give you a brand name drug, and the pharmacist says, "Well, let me see if I can get you the generic." And then what happens? The pharmacist calls you up and says, "I'm sorry, they're not going to pay for the generic." So there's a coupon in the background, and it's moving through their internal network, and it's revenues moving through the system, and somebody's getting the benefit of that coupon. And it's not your 80-year-old grandmother. She's not getting that benefit, and neither is the pharmacist. And that's the problem here. No transparency. We don't know. We can't even tell you for sure what's going on in that committee because people would not answer the questions. Transparency part of this bill is the best part. On and for the bill.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I will be brief, I promise. I would welcome everybody in the Senate to Committee 10. You've just experienced what we've been experiencing the entire interim. Time in the interim, I don't know how many hours, maybe the committee members can help me, hundreds of hours we've spent on this subject. The former chairman would also concur that we spent hundreds of other hours prior to this year on this same subject. I would, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to be shorter so I'm closer to my mic. My observations are this, and some of them have been spoken. Conflicted, one of the presenters, yeah, we're all conflicted. We heard a lot of testimony from a lot of different people. My concern and the reason that I voted no in committee, we're answering a lot of good issues in this. I'm not sure it's the perfect instrument, but it's an instrument. We're addressing some important things. So there is a problem. We're very conflicted about it. Ultimately in this committee, and I feel it's one of my responsibilities as chairman, the person that we need to worry about the most is the patient. We need to make sure our constituents, the patient, be they 80 or be they 8, are getting what they need from our healthcare system. Right now in the pharmaceutical industry, they're not. It's a very confusing, big mess. We could talk about it for hours, I won't. I have something in my business every single day called a prior authorization. Any pharmacist or anybody that's ever dealt with pharmacies or with prescriptions knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's a mess, I hate it, and I wish we could fix it. And we probably can at some point, and probably national government needs to deal with it at some point. I'm intrigued by the idea of delaying this and bringing all parties to the table, and I would hope that if that becomes a task force or a select committee, that some of you in here would be interested in being on that committee, because we need to bring everybody to the table. We need to hear accurate things. We heard how much it was going to cost us, how much it wasn't going to cost us. And it was hard to get accurate figures from anybody. So conflicted is absolutely the right word. We heard about bananas. We heard about prime rib. I was really hungry at that committee meeting. But I'm certainly not opposed to moving this forward, but I think it's something that needs to be moved into the future and looked at a lot deeper than what we looked at it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. So if you're involved in this, prepare to have your mind boggled. This is what Committee 10 does all the time. And this is one of our big subjects. So I would not stand and say, don't vote for this bill or do vote for this bill. It's confusing. I think it deserves more discussion. I think it's an intriguing idea to delay the onset of the bill, to perhaps bring all these parties to the bill and hopefully, get the truth out, get it out on the table. Somebody's making money and somebody's not. We lost a pharmacy just down the street from our previous home over on Pershing Street. Just down the street, we lost an independent pharmacy down there while we were in there. They're not making money. They're not doing well, and we need to fix that somehow if we have a means to make that better for the patient. And that's my bottom line. We need to make not only that the independent pharmacists stay in business, but ultimately, let's make sure the patients are getting what the patients need. Let's make sure that they have affordable medications and that they're getting what they need. They're getting the right drug at the right time, and it's going to the right person. And with that, I think we need to wrap up, but I would certainly answer any further questions, which hopefully there aren't any.
Sorry. Question's been, hold on. Senator.
I think I have one more chance, don't I?
Yeah.
I've been asked a lot of questions.
She got me.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate all the kind words the senators have said about what we've done in committee and their presumed support of passing this bill forward. I would like to address some of the questions because I think they were important and I think they need to be answered. Whew. Lack of breakfast has me a little dizzy here. We talked about costs, more details. I think if each and every one of the senators will look at those packets that they received, you will see and receive answers to several of your questions. I think you owe it to the body to go through those. And if you have more questions, one of the things I'd like you to do is speak to some of the pharmacists. We can make arrangements for you to go to a pharmacy and all that. One of the senators to the north of me mentioned that this needs to be an interim topic. That's what this was. It was an interim topic. And I gotta let the senator know, I personally spent over 60 hours on this particular piece of legislation. That's a lot of time working with both sides of the aisle. One just consistently said over and over, no, you can't do this. It's gonna cost, it's gonna cost, it's gonna cost. We saw no graphs, no charts, no details, just it's gonna cost. The other side came in with charts and graphs and numbers, data, pictures, pharmacists crying. It was just amazing, all the details I got from the pharmacists. Some of the issues the senator to the west of me brought up about pricing and how it's going to affect the state, all these issues were brought up. All these issues were put in the draft bill. And the final bill that came out removed a lot of what we wanted in the bill. So what you see, the few redresses that are left in there are indeed some of the top priorities for our pharmacists. If we lose this little bit, we're going to lose a lot. Again, the agency that provided the assumptions, I spoke to him with our LSO staff, a pharmacist, and based on what we're going to do with the amendments, we're going to relieve this bill and the assumptions millions of dollars. And hopefully, again, I get that data and can get that out to you. About pushing the date of the bill back, I think we'll talk about that. I'd love to get with the pharmacists and see what they think about that, but I truly think that we should move on and let these few redresses be taken care of. No one knows where in the bill the cost exists. During one of our last committee meetings, people from the county were coming in, insurance companies were coming in. This bill's gonna cost. Not one person can tell us where in the bill that cost lied. Not one of them. I asked, where's the cost? Again, getting with the insurance company, amending the bill will relieve a lot of those costs. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna stand in support of this bill, and I will say, please move it forward. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that to do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 36, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Senate File 36 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our, oh, excuse me. Mr. Senator Floor Leader, Senator Driscoll, if I can say it right.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee of the whole beg leave to rise and sit again.
I will move out of your way, sir. I only have one left, but lunch is coming.
Yeah.
From down there. Just wait a minute, please.
I did not follow through with the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Sounds like no's Failed.
Sounded like a strong no. Okay. Mr. Floor Leader, what's your desire then? Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah.
Corporation's got 10 bills in front of it, so we're splitting them up, just so you know, there's no crazy things going on. We're gonna move some bills over to different committees so that we can actually get through them before they perish on the floor. So, absent objection, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to re-refer Senate File 69, Property Tax Limits, from Committee Number 7, Corporations, Committee Number 5, Agriculture. You can do them one at a
Okay.
time. You need that.
Senate File 69 referred to Agriculture. Absent objection? It's referred. Re-referred. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Absent objection, I would like to re-refer Senate File 93, Legislator Voting Records, Legislative Website, from Committee Number 7, Corporations, Committee Number 5, Ag.
Senate File 93, re-referred to Committee Number 5 Ag. Absent objection, no objection. Committee, bill is referred. Go ahead.
Mr. President, absent objection, I'd like to re-refer Senate File 96, Collection of Election Ballots, Prohibition, from Committee Number 7, Corporations, to Committee Number 5, Agriculture.
Absent objection. Senate File 96 referred from Committee Number 7, Corporations, to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. Continue.
Mr. President, absent objection, I would like to re-refer Senate File 97, change in party affiliation, from Committee Number 7, Corps, to Committee Number 5, Agriculture.
Senate File 97, re-referred to from Committee Number 7 to 7. Let me finish what I was going to say.
Okay, that's fine. If they want it there, we'll keep it there.
Yeah. This point, re-referred to Committee Number 7, Committee Number 5. Now you can object. Which one of you want to talk to it? Senator Case?
Mr. President, this is getting kind of ridiculous. These are Corporations Committee bills. The title of the committee is Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions. And if all the members can join me in objecting to what is being attempted here, it'd be great. I definitely object.
Okay, any further discussion? Let's go to Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share in the objection. These.
Let's not repeat what was just said. Go ahead and find
Understood.
something new.
Some of the bills are certainly not contentious, and those are the good ones to re-refer to different committees where you don't have the expertise. Those that are contentious should remain in their home committees where the expertise is available. I think these are clear cases where they should remain in their home committees.
All right, Senator Scott, and then to Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add to all that, if you refer all these bills to the one Ag Committee, you simply shifted the workload problem from corporations to Ag and have the same problem. You haven't solved it.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sharing along with my fellow Committee Number 7 colleagues and fellow chairman, the Corporations Committee is one of the hardest working committees of the legislature, next to Committee Number 1, of course, producing the highest amount of bills and with the greatest amount of expertise on election issues. Now, historically, I know the new chairman of the Corporations Committee might be unfamiliar, but we only have a 2-day committee meeting week. But I remember the days when we used to meet at 7 a.m. Certainly not my preference, but we do the work with the expertise of those subjects. If the Committee Number 7 is overworked, I would not take the principal purpose of its work of elections issues out of Committee Number 7. Now, I assure you, I do not look forward to those bills due to the excitement surrounding them, but the appropriate decision is to leave them within the proper committee. If Committee Number 7 is overworked, certainly the property tax exemption bills, not within Committee Number 7's purview, and it makes sense to refer that to a committee that can and has the time to work that. I don't know the other 4 bills that the committee has, but certainly they're not the primary focus of the Elections Committee. So with that, I would object and note that for the body.
Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, I'll reply, or Mr. President, I'll reply and point out that we have 9 bills. What I left were committee members' sponsored bills, which was part of the objectors. I'm happy to send their bills to another committee. So I left committee bills that were personal bills in the committee. We moved other ones. I'm more than happy to keep them. I would point out that we have a redistricting bill coming up. And that's after we've spent 40 meetings and countless hours. I don't think we can pass that over. And I'm guessing that's going to take probably a whole meeting to pull it up, even if we start at 7. This is probably as contentious as we've had this year. Maybe I'm wrong. That bill's going to take time. And we're under a time limit to get bills out of this chamber. I'm happy to take whatever bills are there. My choice was to leave, so I didn't have to have committee members leave the meeting to go to another meeting to present their bills. Happy to take whatever falls, but I will keep in mind that we may kill some bills. If we have 9 bills, Ag Committee had one bill. We have 9, and we have redistricting bill. That doesn't count anything else that's yet to come. So that is where I stood. I'll take direction, but that was, as committee chairman, what I chose. I'm happy to take any and all bills that anybody wants, and I'm happy to start at 6 if we'd like.
Okay, thank you. We've had an objection, so it's my understanding that we take a vote. Senator Boner, Chairman Boner.
Thank you, sir. Just briefly, just like to point out that we had coordinated this, the 2 chairmen of the committees in question, and just so the body's clear, it is a workload issue, but also, we weren't, it's not like we're referring redistricting or anything like that. The concepts and the bills are relatively straightforward. And while it certainly is sitting on corporations, I appreciate the expertise there. I also feel confident in the committee number 5's ability to hear those bills, hear testimony, and to make good decisions based one way or the other. They're going to be based on facts and knowledge of our election system, which we of course all have, given that we're elected officials. So just want to throw that out there for body's consideration.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Chairman.
Just for clarification, are we objecting to one or multiples of them? I'm happy to do it. I'm looking at a fellow senator. We had 2 objections. I'm happy to go with more than one, but I want to know what people want.
Mr. President, my objection is response to Senate File 97, and I would definitely like to have a vote on that issue.
Looking for, yeah, we can do it on a voice vote, I'm told. Senator Hicks, are you asking for something?
President, for clarification of the body, a aye vote means to what?
An aye vote moves it to committee number 5, Agriculture.
All right, and a no vote would be to leave it with the Corporations
Correct.
Committee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thanks for clarification, Senator Bidman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll call a roll call on this vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, roll call being requested. This is on moving, re-referring Senate File 97 from Committee Number 7 Corps to Committee Number 5 Agriculture. Roll call, please.
On the motion, Senate File 7. Roll call. Anderson? 97, I apologize. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Driscoll? No. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Murphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Colt? No. Cost? No. Landon? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Closing vote? Closing vote closed. On the motion, 13 aye, 17 no.
By your vote on the motion, committee, Senate File number 97 will remain with corporations number 7. Mr. Floor Leader. Are you all done with those? Because I got one other piece of work here. All right. This is what we're going to do, folks. One of the ones you've been waiting for, we're going to put it in the process under introduction of House bills. House Bill 100, first reading of the House bill. Please read it in.
House Bill 100, redistricting of the legislature, sponsored by the Corporations Committee, an act relating to state legislative districts, has passed the House on third reading. Ayes 54, noes 6.
Thank you. House Bill 100 is referred to Committee number 7, Corporations. Now it's in the process. And we're back to Mr. Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move we stand recess until 1:30.
Okay. Motion is to, okay.
2:30, excuse me.
Let's do some announcements before we call for the motion. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Appropriations Committee, Committee number 2, today, upon adjournment for lunch in room 301, we'll hear the following. SF 26, District Judge Positions, Authorization and Funding. SF 48, 2022 Large Project Funding. SF 80, Omnibus Water Bill Construction. SF 82, Supplemental Water Development Funding. Then tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. in 113, your Appropriations Committee will hear SF 90, Capital Financing Select Committee Membership, and SF 112, General Government Reports.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet tomorrow upon the noon recess in the connector West 6. We're going to take up Senate Joint Resolution 2, Senior Citizens Property Tax Relief, Constitutional Amendment, and Senate File 76, Financial Exploitation of Vulnerable Adults. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Baldwin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just an early notice that on Wednesday, 7:30 a.m., we did reshuffle some things because today your committee number 10 is going to meet at 7:30 a.m. to hear Senate File 54, Licensed Professional Counselor Compact first, followed by Senate File 83, Prohibiting Chemical Abortions, followed by Senate File 114, Employer COVID-19 Vaccine Mandates and Exemptions.
Thank you. Chairman Landon.
Thank you. Mr. President, your Transportation Committee will meet upon adjournment tonight in W2 downstairs. It'll be a late one committee, so grab an extra cup of coffee. We will take up Senate File 17, Automated Transport of Cargo and Goods. Senate File 92, Driver's License or ID Card Renewal or Extension Exception. Senate File 22, Utility Trailers Permanent Registration. And Senate File 14, Telecommunicator Cardiopulmonary Resuscitation.
Thank you. Chairman Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, will meet upon adjournment tomorrow in Capitol Extension Room W2 and online to consider Senate File 86, Wildfires 1 Call Exception, and Senate File 81, Clarification of Existing State Ownership of Groundwater.
Thank you. Further announcements? Chairman Anderson.
Mr. President, your Minerals Committee will meet upon noon recess at about 1 o'clock in W004 and online. We will finish up Senate File 84, Mineral Royalties, Proportional Severance Tax Relief, Senate File 55, Insurance Sandbox, Senate File 68, Decentralized Autonomous organizations amendments, Senate File 71, deregulated industrial power zones, and Senate File 56, lottery amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Further announcements? There being none. You've heard the motion. All those in favor, this is stand in recess. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. We'll stand recessed until 2:30.